Welcome to T
and E with the T.
I'm your host, Teresa.
I'm your co-host, Edwin.
And today we're talking about Los Cristeros.
Viewer and listener discretion is advised. This episode contains discussion of sensitive topics that may be distressing for some audiences. Please take care while listening, and if these topics are triggering for you, we encourage you to prioritize your well-being.
I wanted to start with a question. I feel like I always start with a question, but I want to start with a question today. Say you were just wandering around, and one day somebody comes up to you and was like, "Do you believe in God?"
Hell yeah.
You would say, "Yeah," right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, "Okay, well, in this country, you're not able to practice your religion or God or worship God in public." What would you do if somebody did that?
You would move? Yeah.
But what if you didn't have the ability to move?
I would rebel.
You would rebel.
Yeah. Peacefully rebel.
Exactly.
Unless God said otherwise. Unless God said, let it rain, let it rain.
So what if they were like, well, no matter what, if you're going to rebel, there's a possibility that you might die.
Then yeah.
It will kill you.
That's the whole point of rebellion. You know you might die.
So you would be okay with that?
Yeah, heck yeah. If I die for the name of Jesus, heck yeah. In heaven, they're going to be like, ooh, that boy Edwin here, that boy Edwin here.
Well, that's what...
I'll be in the textbooks for in heaven and for the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah.
That would be fire, actually.
I think for me, I would do the same thing. I think it would be really hard for me to go against God because the punishment that he would do to me would be worse than what they're about to do to me in earth. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I feel like, yeah, I would have to do the same thing. I would have to rebel. But that's what...
Would you be? A medic?
What?
A medic?
What do you mean?
What would you be in the rebellion?
I don't know.
Telecom?
I'll be the one. No, I'll be the one on the horses going and shooting everybody.
Oh, Aquila.
I'm just joking.
Hey guys, you should put the video of you shooting a gun right here.
Okay,
yes,
you're making it harder for me. No. Okay, so that's what Mexico had to go through that back in the 1920s. They went through a time where the government was anti-religious and they were going against everybody that practiced religion. And over there, it's Catholic, right? Catholic is the
Catholicism,
main... Yeah, it's the main religion over there in Mexico. And so, yeah, they were going against it, and a lot of people died throughout that time because they were fighting for their religion.
Yeah.
And they were called the Cristeros.
Mm.
The Cristeros were the ones that were like, they were going against the government, and the government was not going to stop them from practicing their religion. Mm-hmm. And so the government decided to, fight with them. And like I said,
fight against them.
Yeah, fight against them. And like I said, a lot of them died, sadly. Mm. So we're going to talk about the Cristeros and why it all went down and what went through those times throughout the 1920s when this one president called, his name, we're going to call him Calles, but his full name was, you're going to help me with this because I have a hard time with Spanish names for whatever reason. Plutarco.
Elias
Calles.
Plutarco Elias Calles.
So we're gonna call him Calles, but he was the president at the time, and he was the one that really put like an end to religion at that. At least tried to, at that time in the 1920s. Mm. Okay, so we're gonna start from the very beginning. Before that all happened, in 1910,
the Mexican Revolution.
There was the Mexican Revolution.
I'm smart.
There was a Mexican Revolution at that time, and a lot of people were dying. There was a lot of things going down. Basically, it was mostly for the poor that was getting what's the word?
Killed?
No, not getting killed, but they were the ones suffering the most. They would take their land and give it to the United States.
The government.
Yes.
What?
So they were trying to, from what I read, they were trying to
Rebel against that.
No, not rebel, but like trying to be cool with the United States. And so they're like, okay, you can have this land. And so they would give it to them.
They gave them Texas and they gave them California and all that stuff.
So they gave it to them.
Pennies.
And a lot of Mexicans, a lot of Hispanics, well, Mexicans because it was from Mexico, a lot of Mexicans felt they just lost their land, they lost their money, you know, they lost where they would make money, and stuff like that. So a lot of it was mostly the poor people, the people that were not as wealthy as everybody else.
Yeah.
And so that was their income and that was their place, and they didn't have at times somewhere to stay.
So that's what the Mexican Revolution was about?
Yeah, so that's what was going down. There was a lot more things happening throughout that time, but that was like the gist of it, right?
Yeah. So so the Mexican Revolution would be like the people fighting against the government. It's like, why are you giving our land to United States?
Exactly.
And then because that's like a civil war, right?
Yeah. So it was similar to something like that, and so the people,
it's crazy
the
that it
citizens
happened
itself.
right after our Civil War. Our Civil War happened like in 18 what?
I'm not sure. So
war after war after war.
Yes. So in Mexico, I don't know if we were in war at the same time, but in Mexico at that time, they were in the Revolutionary War, right?
Yeah.
So about 900,000 people died.
Dang, almost 1 million?
Yeah, almost 1 million people died. And it was crazy. It was crazy. The citizens from Mexico were really suffering, and they were going against the government because they were like, why would you allow this? Now, at this time, the Knights of Columbus, it brings religion to the situation, right?
Yeah.
So the Knights of Columbus is like a Catholic organization, a Catholic organization founded in the United States in 1882.
1882.
Yes, by Father Michael McGivney. Okay? So their goals included helping Catholic families in need, supporting charity, education, and community services, and promoting Catholic values and religious freedoms. So that was the point of the Knights of Columbus, right?
Yeah.
The Knights of Columbus was also, they had them in Mexico.
And that was a lot in 82, right? Yeah.
So a lot of Mexicans joined this organization and became the Knights of Columbus. Well, I guess the Knights of Mexico.
Yeah.
And so at that time,
they joined the rebellion, the revolution.
The revolution during the Mexican Revolution. They weren't directly involved in the fighting, but they became important later for their support for Catholics in Mexico. Later on.
Okay.
So.
Dang, that's crazy.
Yes.
So okay.
Yeah. So obviously, especially moving into the Cristeros War, which we're gonna talk about after the revolution.
Yeah.
They were also a part of it, and was later conflict rooted in the they were in the anti-Catholic policies, like they were trying to come out of that situation that was happening in the revolution, and
they were
now
trying
we're
to prevent
again.
it.
Yeah, they were trying to prevent it.
Knights of Columbus?
The Knights of Columbus.
And they came from the U.S., right?
That it was formed in the U.S.
You know where I see conflict?
What?
The revolution. The revolution is saying. Well, I'll let you finish because you might talk about it.
No, continue.
So, the revolution of Mexico is Mexico telling people to stop, or the people in Mexico telling Mexico to stop, giving land to the U.S. And then you got these U.S. people from Catholicism going into Mexico, helping out with Catholicism. And then I could see how the government's going to be all like, no. Those people are going to convert them into Americans, and they're going to convince people to give land to the U.S. and blah, 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 and all these other other small things that the revolution didn't like. And the government at the time noticed that the previous governments were just giving land to the,
Yeah.
to the U.S. So the new government probably is against that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there was a lot that went down. So
It makes sense.
there was a lot of things that were kind of going back and forth, and then with the religion, all the situation
It's a whole
they were trying to
Thanos
fight.
situation. You know about the Thanos situation?
No.
It's like Thanos in Endgame, right? You know the movies, Avengers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Thanos wanted to wipe out half of all the population, and his reasoning wasn't for evil; it was actually for good in his own mind. Is so people can thrive because his planet died because of overpopulation. So he wanted to cut half of the people in half so everybody can live. And at the end, he was like, you guys are gonna thank me later. And he was trying to be noble in everything he was doing. He wasn't trying to kill anybody that he didn't have to kill. And I guess that's what they were trying to do. You know what I mean? They were trying to do for the better of good.
I know that was for the better of good.
The government of Mexico. They were trying to do the better of good, but they were taking things into their own hand. That's why, I'm always on, you shouldn't decide good and evil for yourself. You should let God do it.
Yeah, those type of situations are very hard, and a lot of people have noticed that they like that control and that ability to be able to control people. But I mean, we'll continue on, and I'll give you an example as to why.
Yeah.
So why was there a backlash against Catholics during the Mexican Revolution? So the Catholic Church in Mexico had been very powerful for centuries. So owning land, influencing people, and controlling education. Okay. And so here's why the revolution turned against religion. Or Catholic itself. Wealth and power of the church. The church owned a huge amount of the land and the wealth. So while most Mexicans were poor, so there was because the churches owned the church land, where the land was at. I mean, where the church was at, that's what they owned the land, and there was a lot of churches around Mexico. And schools for religion and stuff like that. So they owned a lot of the land in Mexico because that was the biggest thing at that time. Well, religion is a big thing in Mexico. And a lot of Mexicans were very poor. And the revolutionaries saw the church as a part of the old elite system that protected the rich and ignored the poor. So that was their perspective on it. That was what the revolutionaries' perspective on how the churches were not helping Mexico, or I guess religion itself was not helping Mexico because they owned most of the land and they owned the wealth, or they had most of the wealth. And so the revolutionaries, so they saw the church as a part of the old elite system that protected the rich and ignored the poor.
Okay.
So that was their perspective on it, right? The Constitution of 1917 included the anti-clerical laws, which included, it was banning religious schools, limiting priests' rights, they couldn't vote or speak about politics, and outlawing church involvement in politics and property ownership.
So this is basically the Constitution of it.
So this is the Constitution, and this is what they did to go against, the religion, right? So that was another reason why they ended up fighting. So many revolutionaries saw the church as holding the country back by controlling people's beliefs and opposing reforms. So a lot of them believed that the church was just washing them out from the beliefs of the government, of the country, and it was only about church. It was only about religion. It was only about God.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, you look like you're thinking.
Yeah, I'm thinking because it's like, what did the church do that the people were so rebellious against the church being in the government? Because I feel like if the church was in the government, the proper church, the proper guidance of Jesus was in the church, everything would be really good. But I guess you got egoistic people that want to be like the political kings within the church, church people trying to be high in ranking and everything, and trying to decide everything for the people, and they decide what's best. It's like not Jesus anymore. It's like the priest as his beliefs. not
Yeah.
Jesus and what he wants to do.
Well, from what I was reading, from what I understood, is that a lot of people were like, whatever laws the government decided to come about or decided to put out, the citizens of Mexico, especially the ones that were involved in the church, seemed to not agree with a lot of the laws or would go against it, because they were like, okay, well, this does not follow our religion, or this does not follow with what we're doing in the church. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so a lot of things like that were happening. And then also the fact that, like we've talked about with the subject,
it makes sense
is
now.
that they supposedly were the ones that were holding the wealth, were holding on the land, and well, I'm assuming that was true, but were holding all the wealth and holding all the land, and they were leaving the poor, like the ones that were poor in Mexico, with nothing. And so I'm assuming they probably thought what they were doing was good. Like you said, like Thanos was trying to do good for his people.
Trying to do good.
But in their eyes, they thought, okay, we're gonna help the poor. But in general, they were really just affecting the poor because the poor were involved in the church.
And
they were going to church.
I see how the U.S. made it different, because the U.S. was like freedom of religion. You can do any religion and you can practice it, whatever.
Yes.
And Mexico before the revolution had the church decides everything. Mm-hmm. And specifically the Catholic Church controls everything. And then after the revolution, instead of making everything free and like no matter what kind of religion, they did no religion at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's what really stirred things up.
Yeah, so I mean, I feel like there was just a lot that was going on in their heads and what they were thinking, and the government and all that stuff. I think they just want to control over all the people, and they were saying that maybe they didn't have all the control, and then also the fact that, they didn't have all the land that they could have because the churches had it, and their churches had all the wealth, so it's like the church to them was the problem. Mm-hmm. The religion, I guess the church goes with the religion, so they wanted to not just get rid of churches, but get rid of the religion itself. Not permanently, but not to practice in public. Does that make sense? Because now you're going to involve other people, and now it's going to be like this controlling thing. Like now you're going to gather people to go against us. Does that make sense? So that was a situation with the Revolutionary War. The Catholics or the church was involved. So what did the Catholics do? The priests were persecuted, so churches were closed, and many Catholics were forced to practice in secret.
This is after the revolution?
No, this is during the revolution. So this is what they were doing.
Okay.
This is what the Catholics were doing at that time. So this is how they were being affected, right? This led the outrage among Catholics, especially in rural areas, eventually caused in the the Cristeros War. So it eventually moved on to then, okay? And like I said, I will talk about it in a bit. And then also during this time, groups like Knights of Columbus supported religious freedom and helped persecute Mexican Catholics, especially from the U.S. And so from 1910 to the 1920s 1921 is when it ended. 1917 is when they made the new Constitution. And so in this Constitution, it involved an anti-religion. So this put an end to public practices of religion, right, of Catholic. So obviously now people are starting to feel like hurt by this, especially the people that are involved in church and stuff like that, and the priests and the Catholics. So now they're wondering, okay, what now? What's going to happen, So this caused a lot of backlash on the Catholics. And now they're being involved in the new Constitution, and they're being involved in this war. So now it comes down to like I said, Caius, the new president, right? The new president, he became president in 1924. So this is right after the Revolutionary War ended and after the new Constitution was made. Mm-hmm. So he was all for it. He was all for ending religious practices in public. He did not want any of that. He believed that basically he was in, what is it called? Atheist? Mm-hmm. He was just not believing in it, right?
Because of the Revolutionary War.
Well, not because of it, but there was a lot of things that I think went down. So he grew up as Catholic. His family was Catholic. He was involved in the Catholic Church. He was in all of that, right? Which made me think or wonder, like, what happened and, like, what traumatized him into wanting to get rid of this or get rid of the religion and public practices, because it's like, you grew up as Catholic. Why would you want to get rid of it?
Well, I mean, I've noticed that, like, I love the Catholic Church and everything, and it makes spiritual things into earthly things. But what I've noticed that Catholicism scares their people.
Yeah.
And the community within the Catholicism shames and it makes people not want to be in that community or be part of that religion. That's what I've noticed. Like, but with the basis of everything, keep in mind, because like Catholics are like hardcore.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like, to be honest, I think they're one of the most like well-educated, well-organized religions that there is. But I think just for its mass and how big it is, it's the quality control isn't there. It really isn't.
I think it just depends.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
Because it's not even like with the priest. The priest might be able to have like good, quality control. But within the priests, they have the staff that teach and everything. And those are the ideal. Those are the core. Those are the foundations. And, you need administrators to elect those kind of people that will teach, that will do this, like that have the Holy Spirit within them teaching these kids.
Yeah, but I think it all just comes down to the people. I think it comes down to who's talking or who's teaching these the religion, because there's a lot of people that kind of force it upon you. There's a lot of people that make you think certain things that is not true. Like, I don't think it's the religion itself. I think it's with anybody. Like, anybody that kind of sees the religion that they're in a different perspective. Like, they teach it in a different perspective. Does that make sense? Like, sometimes, people have their own ideas or their own beliefs and like kind of turn it around to what it actually is. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I feel like maybe those things kind of maybe he had people like
poorly
that.
Influenced. Yeah.
Maybe he had people like that in his life that kind of like made him think like otherwise, or made him think bad things or whatever. I don't know what it is, right? But he had a daughter that was studying in convent in the Los Angeles. So
convent?
So like a church school, basically.
Oh, okay.
So she was studying in church school, and Gaia's wife was known for her devoutness in the church. Mm-hmm. So it's like his family is involved, right? Yeah. And like I said, he was raised Catholic, and all his ministers were also Catholic and raised Catholic. So it's like, what's going on? So I think I think that he was just traumatized, or something happened. I don't know. So he continued with that, with the new constitution and the anti-religion and practices in public. So in 1926, this is a few years after the Revolutionary War in Mexico, like I said, the new constitution was changed. This is when the relationship between Mexican government and the Catholic Church was being affected, and the President Calles began to strictly enforce the anti-religion laws written into the Mexican Constitution of 1917. This started in 1926. So
1926 he started reinforcing the laws.
Exactly.
Okay.
So he came into office in 1924. Mm-hmm. But by 1926 he decided to enforce those laws. Yeah. Right. So We're going to start off with Gaius was just openly anti-Catholic. He wanted to bring prosperity to Mexico. On May 4th, 1926, people from all over Mexico were sending letters to the President Gaius to change the Constitution in a way that would not affect their practices of their religion. Right? And so now it's already, people are like, okay, we're trying to beg, the President Gaius to be like, hey, can we please just, not have this on the Constitution? Like, I understand you're not, you're religious, but we don't want that to affect our religion and our perspective on it, right? And he did not care. He ignored him. He didn't care, and he was like, no, I'm going to keep doing this because this is what I think how Mexico is going to turn.
Mexico needs,
Yeah. So on May 14th, 1926, there were already many protesters. So there were already people just trying to fight for this. So Gaius seemed to not care. In different states of Mexico, they turned them into public schools. So they turned the churches into public schools. He already started shutting things down, and he was starting what he wanted to do.
But peacefully.
At that time, peacefully, yes.
Okay.
So by June of 1926, Gaius signed a law called the Gaius Law. It was known as the Gaius Law, which basically priests could be fined for 500 pesos, around $250 back then, and just for wearing religious clothing. So they were
outside
fined
of the church or
outside
anywhere?
Of the church.
Oh.
Outside of the church. So they weren't allowed to be seen with their gowns, with the religious gowns. If they were seen with the religious gowns, they were fined $250 back then, at least. That's how much it was. And so if priests spoke against the government, he or they would be sent to 5 years in prison. So
I see what they're trying to do. They're all like, okay, don't start the revolution again.
Yeah.
That's what his mind was probably like.
His mind was probably
don't
in that.
Start the revolution again.
But obviously,
things are different now.
No, I guess it go against your free. Well, I don't know how it was in Mexico, but at least for here in the United States, it go against your freedom of speech. You're be able to
they don't have
talk about that.
That's a U.S. privilege.
I know, and so that's what I'm saying. Like, they probably felt like, okay, we can't even say nothing. Like, we can't do nothing. Like, this is our religion. Like, they were probably
why are
just
you gonna tell us what not to do?
So I think they were trying to go against all of that, right? I don't know how it was at that time, but yeah. So this law was set to start on July 31st, 1926. So at that time it was June. So it hadn't started yet, but he stated like this law is gonna happen on July 31st. So by July 5th, the Pope was sending messages to Catholics around the world to pray for August 1st to help stop the government attacking the Catholics, from attacking the Catholics. So they already knew by August 1st, something is about to go down. Like that's when everything is about to shut down. That's when there's going to be no public religion practices, no public teaching of religion, and everything was going to be shut down, like I said.
Yeah.
So by July 7th of 1926, Catholic and protesters of the church, of church leaders in Mexico were staying quiet about any plans to resist government, because at that time they were already starting to get punished and deported because a lot of the priests were from Europe. So on July 21st, he said that nothing would change his mind. He, as in Gaius, would not change his mind on changing the Constitution. He's going to continue, and he's going to go up into like August 1st. August 1st is going to be the day that he's going to, close everything down. So by then, 40 priests were already asked for the government for passports so that they can leave the country, because they did not want to be involved in all of this.
The priests asked for passports?
Yes. So 40 priests were already wanting to leave the country. And so by July 31st, 1926...
What do you think about them running? The priests running?
I think that obviously there's nothing really else to do. What can they do? That's their life. I mean, at that time it was very peaceful. At that time they were not doing anything.
Fight peacefully.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they were doing.
And like keep doing what they're doing because that's what they're.
Or maybe like they prayed and they were like, hey, maybe God is telling us we gotta go.
Yeah.
Maybe they knew that something was about to go down. And obviously they don't want to be involved in that type of mess.
That's not their fight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they were just like, no, we don't want to be involved in this and we're good and we're just leave the country. I mean, that's what you said you would do. You would leave the country? No?
No, as somebody told me, like, you can't worship Well,
that's what it is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they're priests. That's their whole life.
Yeah.
That literally is their whole life.
Yeah.
They can't do nothing else.
And you want to continue doing that, so you'll do that somewhere else.
Yeah. A priest is not going to step down from being a priest. A priest is going to want to be a priest.
You have a big point.
So he's going to want to move to a country where he can be or still do what he has to do, which is being a priest.
Well, yeah, you have a big point. I guess it's difficult then.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's very hard. I mean,
because it's like you fight for your religion, or do you to stay in that nation? It's like, it's like going to North Korea and being all like, oh, we're gonna establish Christianity here. You know what I mean? It's a good thing, and you should fight for it.
No, that's different though. That's forcing the country.
No, not forcing.
Because how are you gonna tell somebody, oh, we're gonna just do this here?
No, like you just go and you start telling people, hey, did you know there's this guy named Jesus?
But this is like the Catholic was already involved in Mexico. The Catholic was already there. Like that was a big thing in Mexico itself.
Yeah.
So a lot of them were getting ready for August 1st. Like I said, that was going to be the day where they were, something was about to go down.
Yeah.
So Gaius decided to have soldiers and prepare them for action, for anything that was about to go down on that day. So they were already having people aligned for that day. So August 1st came, and members of the Regional Confederation of Labor paraded throughout the streets of Mexico City and other cities to show support in government religious regulations. So they were basically walking the streets and were like, yeah, the government's doing great, like, yay, they're ending it, woo, like, basically.
The labor force.
Yeah. So they were with the government. Like I said, Gaius was just having meetings left and right, having meetings with his people, his government and all this stuff. And he was like, okay, well, something is about to go down. Like, if they're not going to listen to me because there's going to be a lot of protesters, because they see a lot of protesters outside. They see people boycotting. They see people signing like little petitions and stuff like that to end the Gaius law. And trying to get rid of the law in the new constitution. And Gaius was like, okay, nobody is listening to me. Nobody is listening to what I enforced. And if they're not going to listen, then we're going to do things a different way. And so that's when he said, like, okay, we're going to gather all the soldiers and prepare for any action on August 1st. Because August 1st is when people are going to start rebelling even more, right? And so by August 3rd, he was not wrong. There were several hundreds of armed Catholics that closed themselves in a church, which this church was called Our Lady of Guadalupe. And they were like, no, this is our church. You're not getting rid of this church. You're not going to close down this church. We're going to stay in this church. So they stayed in that church, armed, ready for anything if they were to break in. And they broke in, and 18 people died and 40 people were injured.
Dang.
So it was very devastating because now people around there knew what was going on and knew what happened, but many other people or many other cities that weren't around in that area at that time did not know. That was in Jalisco, right? Did not know what was happening, what was going on, or what was about to go down. So they didn't know that people were dying.
Of the news and everything.
No, I mean, it wasn't in any media. They did not share it in any media. Nobody was talking about it.
I wonder if that was regulated.
I think Gaius had something to do with it. I think Gaius did not want everyone to know so that he wouldn't scare everybody. And he'll just like come at you like surprisingly. You know what I mean? So that was already starting to go down. So there was already battles happening. So many outbreaks started in Jalisco, Zacatecas, and Michoacan. And then, like I said, they were not reported to any media. Despite the violence, Gaius continued with his belief and what he wanted to do and how he wanted Mexico to be.
It's like another revolution.
Yes. So sadly, Mexico was going from war to war. So on January 1st, 1927, the Cristeros started their chant. So the Cristeros were now formed, and now they were calling them the Cristeros. Mm-hmm. And they had this chant that they would say every single day, every single night, every time they would fight. The chant was "Viva Cristo Rey." So in English, it's "Long live Christ the King." So that was their chant, and that's what they were saying. They would just be like "Viva Cristo Rey" everywhere they were at, right?
Yeah.
And so they were chanting this all the time. So that started on January 1st, 1927, when the Cristeros were formed and they named themselves the Cristeros. People that were soldiers in the past, that were involved in the government in the past, that are not involved anymore, that are not in as a soldier anymore, right? They had connections to how to get the ammo, how to get the guns and stuff like that. They would have even women go and find the guns, go and find the ammo, get our equipment and get it all together so that we can go and fight. The streets were filled with people on the floor. The streets were filled with blood. The streets were filled with people hanging on trees. Like, you will see everybody just lying on the ground and dead. And they did this on purpose. They did this on purpose. The government did this on purpose, allegedly, obviously, but to show that we're not playing. Like, if you're not going to listen to us, this is how you're going to end up. It was a lot of back and forth, fighting, a lot of back and forth, arguing and whatever. A lot of priests were being killed in front of everybody. A lot of priests were being hung in their churches, and people would go in there and they would see the priest hung and all that stuff. And it was just very, very sad. It was very sad, especially if you see your priest, the person that you go and pray to, the person that you go and tell your sins to, and is the closest to God, you find him hung, or you find him dead, or you see him die. You're like, what the heck? Like, that, it brings a lot of anger to you, at least for me. It would bring a lot of anger to me if I saw my priest or the person that I go and, see every single Sunday to learn about God and to learn about my religion, and I see him hung. Like, that would bring so much anger to me. I'd be like, no way. We're about to do this to you too. Like, this is not about to happen. Like, I don't know about you. How would you feel if you saw that?
I would pray. It would scar me, though, because it's somebody that, I bet you a lot of people's faith were tested, and a lot of people were all like, where's God in this?
Yes.
Yeah, why did God let this happen?
Exactly.
Oh, I understand.
What?
So here, let me tell you a little something. So this kind of mirrors a story in the Bible. So let's represent Israel was a nation, and it had a bunch of different kings, and they worshiped different idols, and they were disobeying God and this and this and that. And let's reflect it back to Mexico. And before the revolution, it was the Catholic Church, and they were doing a bunch of bad things, influencing people and doing this and bad. So what happened to Israel, like they're both identical. What happened to Israel was that Babylon came and destroyed them. Mm-hmm. So what happened in Mexico? The government came and destroyed them. Mm-hmm. And now they're trying to build back their church and everything, and it's being hard, and now they have it built. Mm-hmm. And Israel, back in the Bible days, they started rebelling and building their churches, and then they went up again. Mm-hmm. Same. It's the same.
I feel like history does repeat itself.
Yeah,
That's
it's
like an
exactly
example.
the same. It's exactly the same with the whole rebellion and then everything. And then what happened? How did they fix it?
So the fights kept breaking down. Many believed that they would not find peace until Caius left the office. So they were like, okay, nothing is working.
Nothing is working.
They were like, nothing is working. We're not going to find peace. And this is not going to end until this man gets out of office. This man needs to go.
Yeah, they wanted to kill him then.
Well, I'm pretty sure they wanted to, but they never got the chance to. Sorry, spoiler. But yeah, so they were like, no, he needs to get out the office. That's the only way. So on July 1st, 1928, Obregón, something like that. He was elected to replace Caius. So now he's a new president. So this was a year later after.
What about Caius? What happened to Caius?
So Caius, throughout the time before that, they were still, continuing the fights. They were still continuing with
No,
all the
why
things
did
that
Caius
happened.
get out of office?
Because he was voted out.
By who?
At that time, it was already done. His sentence was already done.
Oh.
Because it was on 1924 that he became president. And now a new election was coming up in 1927.
He was elected out by the people.
He was elected out by the people. Obregón, I think that's how you say it. I really hope so. But he became the president of Mexico and replacing Caius. He went into office and everything was good. They were all cool and everything. But he was murdered 2 weeks after he got into office by a man named Jose de Leon. He thought that he thought that he was going to continue the Cristero fight. So he was a Catholic man himself. So he believed or assumed that this new president was going to continue the fight. By 1928, Caius got out of office. So Congress added another person onto the office for temporary president. His name was Emilio Portes, Portes. He was a friend of Caius, which he promised to continue Caius' policy. And people were scared. People were like, oh, shoot, what is this man going to do?
They're going to kill him too.
What is his plan? What is he going to do to us? Is he going to continue this? So, but he actually allowed a couple people to join the office with the government. And those people kind of were not thinking so much about the religion itself.
They weren't following the laws of Caius.
Yes. So they weren't following the laws of Caius, and they believed more in the church and what they wanted to do. So they were like, okay, well, the church is not really causing any problems to us. I don't see a problem with it. So let's try to keep peace and not involve the church. They believe that. Why was the church being punished for the things that we want to do as a government that is trying to make the Mexico better? Why is the church involved? They thought that, at least.
Yeah.
So they were like, okay, well, we got to make peace because a lot of people are dying. And we're affecting a lot of people from Mexico. We're trying to help Mexico. We're not really helping as much because now people are dying. Innocent people are dying. On February 19, 1929, the government agreed if the church followed the laws of Mexico, then peace will return. So they changed the Constitution itself. They got rid of whatever the anti-religion in the Constitution. They got rid of that. They went out and told the people, the citizens of Mexico, and stated that we're no longer, continuing this situation, this fight, and we don't have these laws anymore. We're going to get rid of them, and we want to declare peace with everyone. And so that's what they did. And the citizens obviously were very happy about this, and they were very thankful. And obviously, just as long as they respected the government, they will be respected by them. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that happened on 1929. So now the war was over with the Cristeros in the government. So now that churches were being open, now people were allowed to go out and worship in public. And the priests were allowed to wear their gowns in public, and the whole fight was over. So now there was peace between the government and the citizens itself, and everything was back to the way it was.
That's good.
So yeah, so that's what happened in Mexico, and that was the situation that went down. I didn't know that actually happened. My dad is the one that actually told me that something like that happened in Mexico, and I never thought that was something that they would go through just because, they were so involved in Catholic itself and the religion itself. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But I hope you guys enjoy this episode.
Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Bye.